We were discussing the verse 11, where it says he took from the stones, and the Zohar interprets this to mean 12 stones. In other words, it's indicated by the verse itself that he took some special stones of the place. Now, how does that fit in with the word makom, from the place? Well, we know why there are 12 signs of the zodiac, because essentially it means 6 and 6. And that, of course, those familiar with a little Kabbalah know that it's referring to the idea of Zeir Anpin, 6 and 6, because the first 6 months are considered the male months. First 6 months are considered the male months, and the second 6 months are considered the female months. Meaning, what is the predominance of the astral influence of any particular month? If it's from the first 6, it's a preponderance of male, meaning positive, and the second series of 6 months means a preponderance of female energy, intelligence. Makom, wherever it's mentioned in the Zohar, wherever it's mentioned in the Torah, hamakom, the word makom means malchut. Malchut, the place. In other words, where things become established, where things become manifested, where things become physically expressed. So when he's saying he took from these stones of that place, meaning that he was taking these stones, and at this point, and we'll shortly understand why, at this point, he was already preparing for dominion over this world, over Malchut, over the place. Like this, the place could be chaos, disorder, like which unfortunately takes place in most of our lives. It's never straight, up, down. He was preparing himself to create dominion, to create control. And therefore, when it says in the very next verse, and we ask what was the connection, and he dreamt, and he sees a ladder. All of the commentators explain that he left Beersheba, the ladder was in the earth, that is going up to the heavens. That's what it says. And they all explain that the center of that ladder was directly in line with the place of the Bet HaMikdash. The place of the Bet HaMikdash, and that when we are discussing here the idea of a ladder, and he sees the angels must have a ladder. I mean, they couldn't walk up and down, I guess, without a ladder. So they're walking up and down this ladder. Obviously, it says, one of the commentators, just to give you an idea of when it's not involving Kabbalah, where you must, without Kabbalah, what about those who seek answers, but for whatever reason did not have the zachut to have access to this information, how would they treat this? So they said there were angels that were being malaveh, or taking Yaakov and kind of assisting him when he was leaving. The angels of Israel were accompanying him to the border. And then when he came to the other side, outside the territorial boundaries of Israel, then the other angels took over. That's the way some explain it. But of course, it still does not explain away the ladder. Jacob's ladder. Who doesn't see pictures of Jacob's ladder? It's become synonymous. The ladder has become synonymous with Jacob. What does that mean? Well, first of all, why would Jacob? And secondly, why a ladder to begin with? Why a ladder to begin with? And again, without the Zohar, I couldn't tell you why the ladder was so significant. I have so many references here that I want to provide you with this evening. Let's see if I can. Yeah, okay. Again, in Parshat Vayetze, you might think out of the clear blue sky, but of course the Zohar discusses V'nei Sulam Mutzav Alza. And the Zohar wants to know what is the significance. And the Zohar is very precise and very exact and very brief. And in fact, he's not even that deep. I know some think that Kabbalah is only for those who have extreme intelligence. But I must tell you, it's not really that way. Not really that way. If the reputable rabbis felt that even a child could study Kabbalah, it's obvious that they felt that it was within the realm of everyone to understand Kabbalah. Anyway, so along comes the Zohar and says, Sulam Romez. What is the secret of a Sulam? Shera'a banav shatitim lekabel Torah b'Har Sinai. He saw that his children are ultimately going to receive the Torah on Har Sinai. And what was the Torah about? This Torah that we're talking about. Where does the Zohar glean all of his information from? From the Torah. Without the Torah, we wouldn't have a basis for the Zohar. In other words, every pasuk here, unfortunately, totally clouded, abstruse in its understanding, but it is the fundamental body by which we can understand what's going on around us. Says the Zohar, this ladder deals with the idea that ultimately there will be a revelation of the Torah on Mount Sinai. In other words, the whole cosmic code of which this Bible is, nothing less and, fortunately, more. In other words, it's a cosmic code. It teaches us all there is to know. All there is to know about everything around us. Forces, which forces prevail, when they prevail, which are negative forces, which are positive forces. Says the Zohar, what is the connection between the ladder and this idea that ultimately revelation of the Torah will take place on Mount Sinai? Ki Sulam hu Sinai. Sulam is Sinai. It's a code. The ladder is a code. You know what the code is? Sinai. What happened on Mount Sinai? What happened on Mount Sinai? Revelation. The Jews went up into another level of consciousness, and therefore was Bila Hamavet LaNetzach. What happened on Mount Sinai? One significant thing. Mashiach. One significant thing. Death no longer reigned. Death no longer reigned. Now what does death mean? Death means a negative energy intelligence. Death means decay. Death means chaos. Person dies. He's over with. He's finished. The family around him are placed in some disarray. There could be chaos with the death of an individual. Death encompasses all forms of what we consider to be chaos and disorder. On Mount Sinai, all of that came to an end. That was revelation. The Jew now received the instrument, the information, of which Unfortunately, most Jews, well, maybe not most Jews anymore, maybe today, half the Jews are into Kabbalah already, thank God. So maybe from today on, I won't say most Jews. I'll say some Jews are still not learning Kabbalah. All right? That on Mount Sinai, they received this information by which they now could put an end to chaos and disorder. No more. Finished. Death no longer existed. The Sulam. And what we're referring to here in this dream is Sinai. How do you know? Very simple. If we have a mathematician here, he'll tell me. Sulam adds up to 130. Samach is 60. Lamed is 30. Mem is 40. Together, that is 130. Sinai is Samach Yud Nun Yud. Adds up to 130. What a simple explanation. How simple could it get? In other words, numerology, something forbidden. You speak to some rabbis, they tell you numerology, that doesn't even exist in Judaism. That comes from some other religions. But it's okay for the physicist. I mean, could he operate without mathematics? He's allowed. But we, in Kabbalah, are not permitted. Anyway, mathematics tells us the fact that they both add up in their hidden version to the same number, they are equal to each other. Like the scientist says, things which add up to the same numbers, although they could be different components of the same thing, once they add up to the same thing, they are equal to each other. 6 and 4 plus 7 and 3 equal each other. But you have a 7, you have a 3, and you have a 6 and a 4. They add up to each other. They equal to each other. So while Sinai is Samach Yud Nun Yud, made up of different letters, nevertheless, they add up and equal to each other. Therefore, a whole concept comes out over here. What did it mean, Mutza Valza? I mean, do you ever see a flying ladder? Naturally, the ladder will be on the ground, and then it goes up. I mean, the Torah, or God felt it was so important, maybe there was some of us around who didn't know how a ladder stands up, that it doesn't stand in midair. You see, he tells us it was on the ground, and its head, or the top, reached up to the heavens. But now, we understand what he's saying. From this level of intelligence, and the level of intelligence of Shemayim. Now we know Shemayim is a code word. What is Shemayim? Ze'ampin. What does it mean? Another dimension. The reality dimension. Alza, Eretz, means Malchut. So simple. It means what he saw in the dream. What he saw in the dream was that it was possible, and that he was now being given all of the channels and instruments and methodology by which he would have total control of this world, the world of physical illusionary reality, together with the reality that never changes. Therefore, we have a dream, and also a dream. The Zohar, which I don't want to go into because I wouldn't have enough time for other things, is the idea of a dream. We know that dreams is information. Dreams are powerful forms of information. Dreams have to be read correctly. Dreams usually come true. However, we have also learned in our discussion concerning dreams, which is something by itself. You ask today researchers on dreams, they're still back to day one. They haven't got the slightest idea what dreams are about. Not the slightest idea. With all the research. Because look at the end of the articles, what they say. We're still not sure. Anyway, dreams is a form of nevuah, form of prophecy. In other words, when you dream, you're getting messages. You're being told the future. However, there are times when the dream is a fabrication. It's not true. There are times when the dream is true. How do you know? So already somewhere else, the Zohar explains that it depends on a person's action. If his behavior is one of negative activity, hates people, talks lashon hara, does all those different kind of evil things, then he will have dreams that will be a total fabrication, no validity, and just to throw a lot of fear into him. It will be dreams of fear, but nothing to do with the future. Why nothing to do with the future? Just because he's evil? So show this guy about how he's going to die in an airplane crash or how he's going to die in an automobile accident. Why shouldn't he be shown bad dreams? In other words, only someone who is righteous, what do I mean righteous? Not negative, treats his fellow man nicely, doesn't hate, doesn't speak lashon hara. What's wrong? So he can see. What about the other fellow? Show him the bad dreams. Punish him with a bad dream. Let him wake up with a nightmare like some people do. Just let him go with a dream without any fabrication. But since, according to the Zohar, dream is part of nevuah, part of prophecy, what does prophecy say? In a word, tomorrow is here now. Although the scientists also believe that. Tomorrow is here now. You know why we know that? Because today comes before tomorrow. Today is the seed of tomorrow. Does the seed include that which will be ultimately manifested at a later time? The seed contains already the fruit. Now, except in a potential manner. So prophecy brings the tomorrow to here now. Now, we have learned in Kabbalah, especially more so in the morning, where we understand that only in an illusionary reality, where we don't see, is there such a thing as today, tomorrow, and yesterday. Time is an illusion. So said Einstein. It's not an immutable. It is mutable. It can change. It's elastic. The reason why when an evil person dreams and he will not see tomorrow, because the only way you can be in another conscious reality called Zeir Anpin, we have a code word for it. Zeir Anpin. If you never heard that word, I say learn the word. When was the last time you learned the word key? Did you ever hear the word key? When you were 2 years old, did you hear the word key? There was a certain time you learned the word key, right? Now you know what a key means. Thing that opens up doors. But before you learned the word, it was a mystery. Then you learned the code word. Key means something that opens up doors. You have to begin to learn code words. Zeir Anpin, code word. It defines a particular manifestation. Which is it? The world of reality. It is the world of Eitz HaChaim. The world of Eitz HaChaim. There is the world of Eitz HaDat Tov Ra, which was created in the Garden of Eden. That is the tree of knowledge, good and bad. In the world of Eitz HaChaim, there's only good. While we think that there is no such thing in this world as a world only of good, we're mistaken. It exists. But unfortunately, for those who are always living in the physical reality level, then he is subject to good and evil. But there is another reality, a reality called Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. When you live in that reality, then tomorrow is here today. Tomorrow is here today. So when he dreamt, he was seeing tomorrow as it is here now. Why was that necessary? Because we're talking about Yaakov taking control. What was Sinai? The total dominion over chaos and disorder. That was the code for the word, by the word ladder. That was the code. So in this dream, he saw, and the dream is tomorrow. He saw by virtue of this ladder, of Sinai, that's what the Zohar says. He saw that his children will be taking control. They will take control. What he was doing now was taking control. So the dream corresponded to what he was doing when it says Vayikach me'avnei hamakom. When it says he was taking the 12 specific stones. It doesn't mean stones. It doesn't talking about him going to sleep on little stones or one stone. It's talking about taking control of the 12 forces that prevail over our lives. 1 month is good, 1 month is bad business. Some months are good, and some months are bad. What does it depend on? Is it always bad for everybody? Let's say business is bad. Does it mean everybody has bad business? No. If business is good, everybody's making money? No. So how could you say now business is good? It doesn't apply to everybody. What it really and essentially boils down to, is it good for me or bad for me? What am I interested if all business is good, if I'm not doing well? Of what interest is it to everybody else if their business is no good, but he's doing well? He's doing bad. Control. So he saw by virtue of this sulam that what he was doing, and that's what it says, depending on the behavior of a person, by day, he will, if he's a good person, he will experience in dreams the future. What do you mean the future? He will experience another reality. The reality of where there is no yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Therefore, this whole idea of dreams, or this dream in the ladder, has some significance, according to the Zohar. He was talking about control. And how do you maintain control? If you can have dominion over the 12 signs of the zodiac. If you have dominion. That means if you do an anabakah, and there are many Jews, small amount that still pray in the morning, but let's say those few who still pray in the morning, can you imagine? They spend the time and effort to go to a Bet Knesset in the morning, and they walk out empty. Because when they say the anabakah, they're not even doing it with a control over the cosmos. He doesn't even know about it. Imagine he's gone through the whole movement. He's gone through the whole motions. Going there in the synagogue in the morning, goes through all those motions, and walks out and doesn't even know what he did. What he could have done, had he had the information. Therefore, when it says from below to above, he's talking about both worlds, the world of illusion and the world of reality. When we asked, where did all these little stones all of a sudden become the stone? Very simple. The only time months make a difference, is when we experience ups and downs. Certain months are good for us, certain months are bad. That's true. Certain months things go better for us, certain months things don't go so good for us. That's when you have 12 different stones. But if you have total control over the 12 stones, they are as one, only one. It's an illusion that they are 12. The fact that there are 12 signs of the zodiac is only an illusion. It is only for those who live in the world of illusion. And if you're not sure about what I mean by the world of illusion, so go see Doug Henning someday, where he'll show you how he can make in front of your eyes a 747 disappear. So if you think we don't live in illusion, go see some magicians sometimes. You'll see. They believe that the whole world is an illusion. That's why they make things happen before your very eyes, and you don't even see it. How did it happen? Because you don't see. Magician is the greatest art. He proves to us how we don't see. He proves to us how our mind cannot go as quickly as his simple hand. Now, what about all the other things that are going on around us that we're not even aware of? Therefore, when it says he took the stone, that stone, because the 12 came under his control as one. There were no longer 12 fragmented time and space frames of a year. The whole year was the same. And I know someone might say, the whole year is the same. I mean, day in and day out, it's the same. What kind of spice is there to life? Well, let me see the one who says that sometimes he feels better and some months better, that he would like to stay sick some months, he would like to lose business some months. I mean, we would all like it to be in a frame of continuity. All right? So that's what it means when it says he took the stone. Now the Zohar continues On page Lamed Gimel of this week's Parsha, 33, where it says, after the dream, what happened? In verse 16, it says, Vayikra Yaakov Mishnato. And Yaakov arose and awaked out of his sleep. And what did he say? Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, v'anochi lo yadati. And I didn't know. Says the Zohar on page 33 of Parshat Vayetze Kislev. And of course, this is our advantage. Even while we study, we're reading Zohar. No greater connection to all that we are studying from the Zohar. Because the Zohar provides that access into an upper level of consciousness. The 4% can only grasp that much, maybe that much. To grasp the full implication of what's going on. No better way, and we're going to learn that right now, no better way to make connections to that level of consciousness that the 4% can never achieve. Never. It has even been verified by psychiatrists. We must remain stupid, they said. That's what they may maintain. But I don't have to, agree with that. But they maintain that. We are all stupid. Of course, there are some who are smarter, stupid people, and there are more stupid people. But we're all in the realm of stupidity if we're operating on a 4% level of consciousness. Says the Zohar, and Yaakov awoke. And he says, V'anochi lo yadati v'shoel v'chi pliyahu shelo yada hasaga gadola kazu. I mean, what is the wonder that he says, I didn't know? Why is that? Why is he so astonished? Why is he expressing this and I didn't know? Well, how would he know? Umeshiv, and he answers, Ma'u aparei shel v'anochi lo yadati. He says, you're translating it, and that's when you're going to read it in whatever language you read it. Even if you read it in Hebrew, it says, V'anochi lo yadati, I didn't know. V'anochi lo yadati. But if you know a little Hebrew, see if the Israelis even knew a little more Hebrew than they know, then they would say, Ani lo yadati. What do you mean, V'anochi lo yadati? They skip it all. Yeah. Because they haven't been trained to be very precise. If the Torah says V'anochi, a code, because it's the wrong word. It's the wrong word. It should be Vani lo yadati. Is that right? I mean, not Anochi. What do you mean Anochi? Ani lo yadati. No. Can't. He knows Hebrew. All right. So what does it mean? Kmo shato omer. Ufnei Hashem lo haliti. Kloma. Lo yadati perush lashon chibur hadveikut. We learned this in Bereshit. Adam yadat Chava, remember, chapter 4, verse 1. And Adam knew Eve, and she became pregnant. We said, what a miracle. That's what it says. He knew her, and she became pregnant. We mortals are usually accustomed to the idea that there's usually sexual intercourse. But over here it says he knew her, and she became pregnant. A miracle. And that's why, if you read it literally, it is a miracle. But a miracle didn't happen. The Zohar, anyway, according to the Zohar, wasn't a miracle. She became pregnant by intercourse. There's no question about that. However, the Zohar says the reason that they use the word yada, that he knew Eve, they tell us that only through information, only through knowledge do you make connections. If you have no information, let's say we're talking about Keshet, talking about Sagittarius. If you don't know everything we discussed today, we didn't discuss everything there is to know about Sagittarius, you have to wait for the book to come out. But if we knew everything there was to know about Sagittarius, we would make greater connection, stronger connection. Because knowing is the connection. You cannot connect to a month or control a month unless you have information. If you don't know, you cannot make any connection. You are then subject to the astral influences of that month, beyond your control, without control. You must know. Therefore, just like that word yada, Adam yada et Chava, It means deveikut, chibur. Okay? When it says, va'anochi lo yadati, meaning, I had not made the connection. That doesn't mean I didn't know. I had not made the connection. Why didn't he make a connection over here? Why did he make a connection? Says the Zohar. Because then nidgalta li, everything was revealed to me. V'lo istakalti la da'at et shem akadosh anochi. Shehu ashkina. Anochi doesn't mean me. It doesn't mean I. Anochi is a code word for the Shekhinah. For the Shekhinah. A code word. It doesn't mean I. It has nothing to do with me. It wasn't him saying, I didn't know. First of all, it could have said lo yadati, would have been enough too. It didn't even have to say ani lo yadati. Didn't have to say ani lo yadati. Lo yadati. But va'anochi is referring to the Shekhinah. We've discussed what the Shekhinah means. I'll briefly go over that again. But in any event, without the Zohar, I would not know that the word anochi is a code. It's a code. Anochi means the Shekhinah. Now what is the Shekhinah? What is the Shekhinah? A code. These are all words. These are all words that spell out a certain cosmic intelligence or a cosmic level of consciousness or a cosmic entity, something which is unseen by the naked eye, maybe never will be seen, but it exists. It exists. Shekhinah is one of those entities. Like we said, Zerampin is a code. Bina is a code. Bina, the word Bina, code. What is the code? Energy store. Bina means energy store. Sag means also another version of the energy store. Anochi is a version of the Shekhinah. What is the Shekhinah? The Shekhinah is for us the chariot. I'm not too happy with the word chariot, but it is our link. It is our link. It is our link to cosmic intelligences that exist, that make us do things. In other words, if you're born during the month of Sagittarius, you're going to act like a Sagittarius. And all of the negative qualities of Sagittarius, you're going to behave that way. Beyond your control. You may never know why you behave that way. If you don't learn what Sagittarius is about, you'll never know why you behave. You'll think this is the way I understood it. But you understand with 4%. So what do you mean you understand it? We just got through saying you understand with 4%. That's your level of consciousness. What do you understand with the 4%? We're governed. If you're a Sagittarius, this is the way you're going to behave. All of the pluses of a Sagittarius and all of the minuses of a Sagittarius. No control. No control. When it comes to a certain condition, circumstances, you will behave as a programmed robot. As a programmed robot, and nothing less and nothing more. But your ego says, me? Me? Telling me I don't make decisions? Yes, according to the Zohar, you don't make decisions. You have been programmed from birth. Do you know why you came into this month of Sagittarius? To be a Keshet. Do you know why? Because according and based on your prior incarnation, this is the month that will assist you in fulfillment of your tikkun and correction. That's why. That's why you were born that month. It wasn't by chance. Your parents, when they had intercourse, and the mother conceived that child, that was the time he was going to be conceived. And that was the time she's going to give birth. All programmed. All programmed. Because no one can tell me that they know this night is conception or another night is conception. They know it won't be without intercourse, but you can't say this was the night that I know a conception is going to take place. No one knows that. No one knows it because it's already mentally computerized. What kind of child will come in here? It also knows, the computer knows. and gives the parents a chance. What's their thoughts? Which I won't go into now, but we read Wheels of a Soul. What were the parents thinking at the time of intercourse? All of this becomes part of a computerized program for that child. No control. No control. The Shekhinah, and everyone has his own particular Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, since we are this physical, corporeal level, we are physical, corporeal people. How do you make connections with non-corporeal matter, immaterial matter? How do you make connections? It's got to be some glue. How do you glue air with paper? Anybody know? How do you glue air to paper? Now, I'll put a piece of Scotch tape at the end of this, and now I'll glue it to the air. No, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work. In other words, things have to be compatible with each other to be glued together, to be bonded together. So for us to be able to make this contact that we're talking about, these celestial internal energies of these celestial physical bodies, which have internal energy intelligences, how do I make connections with it? To have control. If you don't have control, then it does all its job on us. It does a number on us. And for most people, it does a real number. At the end, nobody's happy with it. No matter when it happens, nobody's happy with the numbers that we're played with. However, there is control. So Anochi is Shekhinah. Anochi is Shekhinah. When he awoke, while he dreamt and he saw everything in his dream, he saw all this. What he was saying was, I was making all of these different combinations with the 12 stones, taking control. But at that moment, says the Zohar, at that moment, he was asleep. And even in his sleep, since he had prepared himself, remember it says at the beginning, he gathered the stones. What does it mean he gathered stones? Says the Zohar. He's putting everything into focus, beginning to take control of the whole of the cosmos. He had all the information. He put it all together. But one thing he didn't do. He didn't make use of it. He didn't make the connection. That means we could study Kabbalah for 40 years and never make the connection. You could learn all about love thy neighbor. You could learn all about restriction. And when it comes down to the point where we should restrict, we don't. What does that mean? Oh, it was too difficult. I know I've learned Kabbalah now for 40 years, and I've learned that I must do restriction in order to create circuits of energy, etc., etc., but I didn't. It doesn't mean you didn't, you failed. It means you never connected. You never connected with the energy. You never connected with the information, but I know the information. Never connected with it. Never. You may be under an illusion that because you've learned already, you're there. No. Despite the fact that he was there, he learned all about it, he did not make the connection. And therefore it says, Vayikra. And he feared. What was he afraid of? What was he afraid of? Didn't make the connection. When you don't make the connection, you've got what to fear. Because we know that from these energy intelligences, which influence our terrestrial realm, our lives, and they do influence us. If negative energy intelligence now is emanating, let's say it's Monday, let's say it's Wednesday, let's say it's the end of the month, of a lunar month, when the moon is waning. We know why the moon is waning. We know why. Because negative energy intelligence is taking over. Why is the moon having this kind of physical relationship with the sun, and therefore our scientists tell us, well, when the sun, at the end of the month, you see the sun is in that position and the moon is in that position, and therefore it appears to us like the moon is waning. It is waning. You know why it's waning? You know what's making these bodies, these celestial bodies, behave the way they do? Because negative energy intelligence, which is the opposite of light, is becoming the dominant force. And when there's a dominant force of negative dark energy, light disappears. When the darkness takes over, the light must move away. That's why the moon is waning. So why shouldn't we begin a venture at the end of the month? Why? Not because the moon is waning, but the moon was provided for in that condition by the law so that we should understand and learn that what's going on at that time. But if we know, and we still begin a business, but I had to, and there'll be 40,000 different reasons. But you learned already that you shouldn't. You learned already not to start something on Monday or Wednesday. You learned that. But I had to. And 1,000 different reasons why you were forced to do it. Nobody forces anybody to do anything. Except when you come under the influence of negative energy intelligence. Therefore, from the 50th or the 16th day and onwards, towards the end of the month, negative dominion is there. So when you have good reasons why you should start in the wrong day, why you should be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right time, when if you were there a minute later or a minute before, it wouldn't have happened, chaos wouldn't have taken place, which happens to so many people around us. Had they been there 1 second later, had they been there 1 second before, it wouldn't have happened. At the precise moment of chaos, what brought that person there at that precise moment? What brought him there? He had no dominion. That's why he feared. That's why he was afraid. Now we come to the next part. And I want to read also what Rabbi Shimon says and all that we've just discussed. He says, and then he says he was fearful, he was afraid, and then it says, Ma nora hamakom hazeh. Nora. What does nora mean? How special. Nora also means special. Special in a way of evil, of being negative, or special being very good. Says the Zohar on page Lamed Hey, also Parshat Vayetze. Hainu da'amar Rabbi Shimon shedvarim halalu shebepasha zu shel hasulam. All of these words, and he spends. I'm only spending a few pages, but he's got 35 pages on it. No, I'm sorry, more, because then he goes into Sitrei Torah. There's some more. Okay. He says this whole pasha that we just discussed. Shebepasha zu shel hasulam heim kulam besod hachachma umarim al devarim acherim milvat pashtam. These words, as we read them, they weren't intended to cloud out its true meaning. It was not the intent of the Torah, obviously. But they are all clouded in secrecy, and they all point to things that are not. Kishebati v'sidati hadvarim lefnei Rabbi Shimon amali, and when I came to Rabbi Shimon, al toma shedvarim halalu shel yeledheim. You could think, I know even a child, says Rabbi Shimon, could have written this story. An child age 5 or 6 could write these imagination stories. No problem. Says Rabbi Shimon, don't think that a child wrote them. Elahim divrei sodot elyonim v'kulam rishumim b'sod hachachma. Again, emphasizing, because I know we'll forget it, that whatever is mentioned here is a complete mystery. Absolutely inexplicable, reading it as a tale or a narration. Okay? Now we come to the next section, where it says, in verse 20, it says, and Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me, and so on and so forth. Okay? Since God already promised him all this, he said before in the dream, I will watch you. I will be with you. Lama lo hemin. Why didn't Jacob believe? Why didn't he believe that he had to say, if God will be with me, and then etc., 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 and then I will give 10% as a tithe. Then he will give 10% if God shows his true colors and he's going to be good with him. And we said that. And the Zohar asks, he didn't believe. Elama, im ye elokim imadi, umeshib, elama Yaakov, chalom chalamti. I dreamt, and in that dream, God told me that he would provide me with all of my necessities. He would take care of me. He would bless me. He would never leave me. However, Chalom chalamti, I dreamt. Bahalomot mehem shehem amitim. There are those dreams that are true. Umehem she'enim amitim. And there are those that are false. Ve'im yitkayem az eda shachlom amiti. But if it really happens, he wasn't questioning, says the Zohar, but he wasn't sure about that. Why wasn't he sure, as we explained before? He was not depending on his righteousness that the dream that he had was absolutely a true dream. Because he was of the nature that he was, thinking always that maybe he wasn't as good as he should be. Therefore, he said it is a possibility that the dream I dreamt, that God promised me, etc., may be a false dream. Because I, in my behavior, may not warrant a true dream. So it was not a question of Jacob thinking maybe God won't carry out his vow, as in the dream. He wasn't sure about the dream. And therefore, maybe God will be with me. So that takes care of the idea that it wasn't that he was questioning. He wasn't sure this whole idea of the dream. What is it teaching us? What do I need this story? To tell me, again, a little information concerning dreams. That when you have a dream, if you want to know if the dream is a fabrication of some imagination, or it is a dream of validity, meaning it is a dream of prophecy, then remember Jacob. Because here, the Zohar says, is the lesson. Not that he doubted God, but that he doubted himself. And so therefore, if your behavior that during the day, that day, was one of negative activity, was one where your vibrations and impressions and relationships with people, specifically with people, was one of a negative nature, and then you had a dream at night, dream is not true. Dream is not true. However, if that day you were successful in your correction, you were successful in your tikkun, and you behaved in a positive manner, your activity was one of a positive nature, then you should know that the dream at night that you dreamt is true. And therefore, you have been blessed with a form of prophecy. And that dream should be taken seriously. That dream should be interpreted, because it is a message. Now, it says, we had another question. It's as if he's saying, if you'll be with me, and everything that I will give, aser asreni lach, I will give 10%. And that seems to be an inexplicable conclusion to this whole section. This is the last verse. And without the Zohar, there really is no explanation, because I noticed other commentators following the Zohar ask the same question, and all say, heaven forbid, should we ever think that Jacob, in his mind, was not sure about God's promise. Don't even think like that. And furthermore, that he's making a deal with God that, if you're going to treat me well, I'll give you 10%. Everyone asked that question, and I have not found a reconcilable answer. Meaning they make attempts to provide us with some kind of explanation, but I think if I repeated it to you, you would probably find, the same questions that I raised. So what is the answer? The answer? The Zohar. Only when you assume that this whole Torah is a code. When he said, V'kol asher titen li, aser a'asrenu lach. First of all, it's a form of repetition. But aser also means 10, obviously. Now, it doesn't say, I'm going to give 10% charity, by the way. It doesn't say that specifically. But how else can you interpret what is going on over here? And because we interpret it as 10%, as charity, we're raising infinite amount of questions. So rather than give an explanation of charity, which it does not say, it is not specific. It's all it says, Asher titen li, aser a'asrenu lach. I will make the 10th for you. I will make the 10th for you. It doesn't say I will give, because there is a section about charity, and it says you should give charity. Titen. 10 in Hebrew means give. I will create the 10th for you. I will make the 10th for you. That's what it really says. But in the absence of that making any sense, they go on to say he means 10% of charity, etc. But it doesn't mean that, says the Zohar. Eser immediately is a code for what? Malchut. Malchut. He is referring to the world of Asiya, our level of existence. A code. It's a pure code. Remember, just like I said, when we were little children, maybe we didn't know what a microphone was. Then someone gave this thing a name. Microphone. Everyone knows what microphone means. If I say microphone without visibly noticing what I was referring to, you wouldn't know. But now everyone knows microphone means this. Malchut is where the world of action takes place. And we know that in this world there is only one thing, only one free will aspect that we have at our disposal. Nothing more. Everything else is programmed. Everything is predetermined. You ask Einstein. It has to be predetermined. Forgetting about the idea, does God know what you're going to do tomorrow? Does God know what you're going to do tomorrow? Does God know that the one who's going to kill somebody, or the one who's going to say Lashon Hara tomorrow, does he know today? Are you going to say no? I mean, God doesn't know what's doing tomorrow. I mean, he can create worlds, but he doesn't know what's going on tomorrow? We can't say that. So he knows what's going on tomorrow. Therefore, the scientists have come to a conclusion, a free universe. After all, man pulls a trigger. Was it known in advance he was going to pull the trigger? Yes. Did he have a choice in not pulling the trigger? No. That's what they came to that conclusion. And actually, in a court of law today, if there were some brainy attorneys, they would say, wait a second. According to scientists, which they keep in a closet, so nobody should know, because you know what would happen in court? A man comes in and he's charged with murder. He says, what do you want from me? Is this world predestined or not? Is there predeterminism or not? There is. Everyone agrees to that. Scientists agree to that. Then I had to kill this guy. It was already predestined. What do you want from me? I had no choice. There was a force that made me do it. A force of predeterminism. Very dangerous. So they don't talk too much about it. But that is their conclusion. It is not ours. It is not ours. Because the one aspect of free will is our ability to restrict negative activity. It's the only free will that we have. Everything else is programmed. Everything else is predetermined, except the one idea. The one idea, to turn around the desire to receive for the self alone. That's all. Therefore, it's very simple. The Zohar says, Aseh Asren has nothing to do with 10% charity. All the questions we raised already have fallen away. It has nothing to do with charity. What does it have to do? With human behavior, with human control. We have learned in Kabbalah, and without going into it, is that restriction accomplishes what for us? That if we're programmed in a certain cassette based on a prior incarnation, we've been programmed. Programmed. Everything we do is already programmed. But we can move from one cassette to another. A one program cassette into another program cassette. By restriction. Into better ones. Rather than live in misery, in chaos, by restricting, if we follow through with restriction, we move into another level of consciousness, closer to the reality level of the tree of life. When he said all about this, and I will return, and I'll have all of the goodness. When? When will he have all of this goodness? When is he sure that God will give him health? When is he sure that God will provide shalom for him? Is there such a thing as certainty? What does the scientist say? Uncertainty. Forget it. Nothing in this world is certain anymore. They all agree to that. Here, Yaakov was learning his first lesson. When God says, I'm going to give you all these good things, prophecy, it's going to be that way tomorrow. How? How can I guarantee for me that tomorrow is going to be right? Not that there won't be ups and downs. Who cares about ups and downs? I'm talking about the ultimate conclusion of any venture, of any endeavor. Restriction. When you restrict, that's what he says. I'm going to take that 10 and turn it around. That 10th, I'm going to 10 it. What does it mean? I take it, and again in Kabbalah we have Or Chozeh, which I can't go into. Returning light. I will make this 10th sphere into 10. I'm going to turn it from being the 10th sphere into the root and seed of 10 spherot. A whole different denomination. Now you know why he was sure? God will be with me, but he knew. What do you mean God will be with me? Where was God in the Holocaust? Where's God in our daily lives that we experience chaos and disorder sometimes? Where is God? Where's God? He's here all the time. He's waiting for you to call him. He's waiting for you to call him, that's all. He's giving you the right to have free will. You don't want free will, huh? Who doesn't want free will? We all demand free will. We demanded free will at the time of restriction. The original restriction. We demanded free will. We demanded the ability to participate in this whole scheme of things. We didn't want to be robots like we were in the endless. We didn't want that. We wanted to have the opportunity to participate, to be able to be in a position by which we can also make things happen, that we could make God be with us all the time. How? By restriction of Malchut, for the desire to receive for the self alone, to one of sharing. Therefore, he was sure that God would help him. Then he was sure. When he made that connection, when he makes that connection, when do you make that connection? When you actively participate like the filament. Filament pushes back the electrical current, the light goes on. When there's light, you have everything. That was the lesson of this. Not talking about charity. He's talking about transforming the desire to receive for the self alone to one of sharing. Thank you. Good night.